Hi, welcome to Culture of Paint. In this bonus episode, we're going to have a chat about the recent announcement by Games Workshop at the categories for Golden Demon 2024. Now, Culture of Paint's aimed at a mature audience, and we might use explicit language and discuss adult themes. So let's talk about paint. Okay, and we're back in. Hi everyone, I'm Henry. Say welcome to Culture of Paint. Joining me as usual are Matt, Andy and Rich. Hello chaps, you all right?
Good day.
We're good. We've got the chat in, we've got sound. It's already 1,000,000,000% better than the last one. Now, just before we kick in, because we are going to jump straight into the main topic for this little extra episode we're doing. So we're not going to do our picks of the week or our paint cultists, things like that. That will be back as normal on next episode. But just before we do crack on with it, I just want to caveat this episode with the fact that why are we talking about Games Workshop's Golden Demon category announcement and all the rest of it? Who are we to talk about it? Why do we care? This, that, and the other. So every member of this cast won a Golden Demon. Matt, Andy, and Rich all took part in the recent Golden Demon UK at Warhammer Fest. All came away with awards. You've got Andy, multiple Slayer Sword winner. You got Matt, so obsessed with Golden Demon that he's created a fan-made archive and spreadsheet and publications celebrating all the entries from the last multiple decades. You've got myself and Andy who have hosted and judged multiple painting competitions. So it's safe to say that we are big fans of Golden Demon, and for us, we only want Golden Demon to be brilliant. We want it to be the best it can be. We love the celebration that it is of Warhammer painting. So if you're hoping for sort of salty bashing on GW and whatnot, it's probably
then DM me.
Yeah, probably not the podcast for you. So just wanted to sort of get that out of the way. But essentially, the announcement came out towards the end of last week. We thought we'd take a few days, make some notes, digest it, talk to a few of our peers about it, and just, there's quite a few changes. We're going to discuss them, whether we like them, whether we don't, and what perhaps we would have preferred to have seen. But we're also really keen to know your opinions in the chat, so I'm going to keep an eye on that as we're going. So, should we get cracking?
Yes, let's do it. So, I thought the first thing we should talk about is what should a healthy or a good competition be? And maybe that's Golden Demon specifically. What do we want it to be like? And what should any competition be like? And I think I'll list a couple bits and then see what you think. But I think with Golden Demon, what's always been appealing is how difficult it is. And that means with that challenge, prestige, it has to be worth winning, right? So I think, you're always trying to make an award something you're really proud of. And I think, Rich will agree with me. We've got a couple Golden Demons and they carry a varying weight in how proud of them we are. So you need to keep that. So that's really important. And I think we went through a bit of a dark time where we had multiple Golden Demons a year, and that proved that if you have multiple ones a year, it dilutes it too much. That's one way of making a competition not good and not healthy and things like that. But at the same time, I really think it's important that Golden Demon is inviting for new competitors. So it's all about balancing that. You don't want it to be so horrible that no one even bothers to enter. You want it to be...
that's because there's only 3 awards, right? There's only one gold. That's why you're saying it's difficult, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's the reasoning. Okay.
It's got to be worth winning, but it's also got to it's got to invite people to participate. They've got to have a shot, and I think actually that can come from categories having a varying difficulty. And naturally, there's always been categories that are more difficult than others. The single categories, they're kind of the heavy hitters. And I think in the last UK Golden Demon, the Slayer Sword was getting picked from single AOS and single 40k. And actually the American one was also, I believe, picked from single 40k, single AOS. So those two are the big categories. But I think if you're sort of new to entering, you should enter what you want. But it is nice that there are categories that are sort of naturally a bit more chill. So I think that's what you're always trying to balance with a competition, really. And I think that's kind of the thing to discuss before going into talking about these new categories, right? Any thoughts?
I agree with what you said, especially around, we did a couple of years where we had the, I don't want to call them lesser golden demons, but more frequent golden demons. And we found that, it's about, I think it's like a matrix of effort reward. It should be high effort, high reward. And over the years, things have kind of changed it, where sometimes it was low effort, high reward. And I think that tarnished it a bit. Like, we would enter things that maybe, if we were being completely honest, well, me, I'm not talking for anyone else, but me personally, I wasn't particularly proud of. But then sometimes I was still coming away with a golden demon, which didn't feel right. So it didn't have that weight behind it. I think it's a delicate balance. I think keeping golden demon in the kind of that little window of prestige that it sits in is important. You don't want to just be handing things out. And I think it needs to evolve with the times. I don't think it should stay the same as it always should. But for me, yeah, a good competition has got something for everybody in that, if you're brand new at it, you enter it, there's a possibility that you're going to win. If you're a seasoned veteran, there are places where you can put yourself that might be a bit more of a challenge. Like you said, with the single fig, I think that is, I always enter vehicle because that's the bit I think I enjoy painting the most, but it's also kind of where I see my ability at the moment.
Well, I think that's when we talk about, I think we'd like to go through all the new categories. And I think, the vehicle category changing is a big one. I've seen a lot of comments talking about changing to an open system and things like that. And I personally wouldn't like to see that, because I like the only top three, because if you get one of those, then you're really proud of it. And maybe that's easy for me to say. But there are other competitions that do open style. And I think if you want to do an open style competition, I think you should go to those as well. And I like that Golden Demon has its own thing. And it's been going since 1987. So I think the top three should stay for sure. I think more categories, changing the categories, that's a good thing. But yeah, I've just seen a lot of comments about the open system. Go to Monty, go to SMC and Golden Demon. I think that's kind of my thing on the open system. But because there is only a top three placing, I think the categories really do matter.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm keen for us to focus in on the categories, because that is the news effectively. If you're interested in understanding the history of the competition or a bit more about it, then we've done quite a few shows on Golden Demon. So yeah, feel free to have a look at that. But essentially, it is, someone's mentioned tickets as well in the chat. It's always been ticketed in a way, in that it's usually been at a essentially a venue has a capacity, so you can only have so many people in it, and whether that's a larger venue or a smaller venue, you're always going to have a cap on tickets. And we haven't generally seen, I don't feel, that have a massive impact. Or let's say on the main demons anyway. But what we want to talk about more, and that might be a discussion for another time, but we'll talk about more, is these categories, what they've given us and what that possibly means. Because as Albert's already said in the chat, as Andy's alluded to, there's nothing wrong with introducing new categories. There's nothing wrong with keeping it fresh. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just some of the choices have this time round seemed a little nonsensical, right?
Yeah, so I think the first one to go over is kind of what Rich said, and it's probably the one, I would say it's the one change I'd say most passionate about, and that is vehicle and 40k large merging into one category. So that is 40k monsters, that would traditionally be things like demons, Avatar of Cain, and tanks. And I really feel sad about this one in particular. And I think everyone knows that the styles are different. And I think, tanks and stuff are such a cool thing where people can do more military modeling techniques, focus on weathering, decals and airbrushing and all that stuff we associate with tank painting. And I really think that tanks deserve their own category. I mean, they did their own golden demon once, so I don't see why they've lost a category now. But yeah, how do you guys feel about vehicle and 40k being merged?
It's very, very difficult. That's like what you're saying. There's military modelling for tanks, historical modelling for tanks, which you didn't really see too much for a while in GD, and it slowly started to come back. And now I feel like it's going to have a more of a difficult time thriving in Golden Demon when you're trying to compare it to an Avatar or a Great Unclean One or something along those lines. They're just two different styles to compare for me. It's just, it doesn't really work.
I agree. I think they're too far apart. Like if just the two examples that you've got on at the moment, like a large model like Sten's Avatar and Craig's vehicle, like how would you judge that? How would you objectively define which one of those was better and where that would place? Like with vehicles, comparing it to other vehicles, there's like you can go through and work through that, like this vehicle to that vehicle, the neatness of this one compared to the detail of the battle damage of that one. Then how do you compare that to something like Sten's Avatar, which uses completely different techniques? It looks with a different feel. For me, this is the biggest surprise and like disappointment, I guess, because it's so far apart. Some of them I can understand. Like I would, like, I would think it would actually be better or easier if you mixed 40k large model and AOS large model. That as a combined category.
And that's something we've heard from a few different people.
Especially
when often the same models are in the same settings. Things like the greater demons, right? Be'lakor.
Well, Be'lakor. Yeah. You can enter Be'lakor twice. That's always always my argument is like, go on, someone please enter two Be'lakors.
Both logos are on the box they sell.
Yeah. So that I think is a barrier. And agreed, I think there's an art to painting the vehicles, because if you go say for instance you went to paint a vehicle the exact same way you went to paint the Avatar or potentially a big 40k large model, you would approach it in a really different way. So I think there is something to be said for just painting vehicles in their own style, and I can see them getting absolutely drowned in the against the large models. And I get there's the argument that, well, if the large models are painted better, then they should win, and I completely agree with that. But I would predict in this first one you aren't going to see a vehicle in the top three.
It's organic versus armor, isn't it? It's organic stuff versus armor, and it feels like in general they're going more game system. So it's like, we know they could merge 40k large and AOS monster together, because you can compare an Avatar of Cain to I can't think of a great demon now, but some greater demon, right? Or what's
Kragnos.
an AOS?
You could compare Kragnos
yes,
to an Avatar, right?
Thank you. So you could compare that, but it does feel they want to keep it in the game system. The other thing is we don't have clarification on the rules, and we have a Horus Heresy category. Can you enter Horus Heresy tanks in Horus Heresy?
Exactly.
Can you only enter Horus Heresy tanks in the Heresy category, or can you enter Heresy tanks into this new category with monsters as well? So
I think
that's silly, really.
I don't know what the reasoning behind it was, but I feel it was kind of a mistake to release the categories and not have a guideline docket on the same page. Even if you have to go back later, like in a couple of months, and tweak it, like having an initial, you can do this, you can't do that, would have solved so many problems.
Even if you title the category better, because if you said Blood Bowl team, that would imply a full team. If you said Horus Heresy single figure, that would show single figure. At the moment, we've got a picture of Horus, which is, cool, a Primarch. But can you enter Heresy tanks? And can you only enter Heresy tanks from that? So they really should have had some rules with it.
Yeah, even if it was just like a little blurb under each category, like this category is for blah 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 blah. So the fact that you're leaving it completely up to interpretation, which is a difficult thing to do because it's a very kind of emotive subject for people. They're going to be very passionate about it, and you're giving absolutely no guidance as to what it is or what it isn't going to be.
It does feel like there was the change in the categories feels it's more of a marketing push to align the categories to use as marketing promotion for specific game systems. Whereas,
okay, well, are we all right to talk about that? Like, I know we kind of had a loose idea of how to work through it, but do you want to talk a little bit around that?
we can wait till we get to that section, but
Well, I don't think we had a specific area for it, but there are, exactly as Matt said, alluded to a few times now, it does seem to be, and Andy said, game system focused, which is I suppose it hasn't really been before. It's been setting focused before, but how to word this?
It's hard to word, isn't it?
It is inconsistent if that is the case. So if we take, for an example, if we're saying it appears to be game system aligned, why, for instance, do we now have a Warhammer Underworlds category, which is a boxed game? It's in the boxed game category tab on Games Workshop, but you do not have a Warcry Warband category, because that is also a box game on the box game tab on Games Workshop. They're both units that exist in the Age of Sigmar setting. They're independent games, but you have rules for those miniatures in normal Age of Sigmar, so they are also Age of Sigmar units. So can I enter an Underworlds warband into Underworlds, and then can I paint another one and enter it into Warhammer Age of Sigmar unit?
Just like the tank thing, right?
Yeah,
it's very, very poorly thought out, this article. What should have been a very exciting confirmation that we were getting Golden Demon, because let's be honest, the last few years it's been a little bit all over the shop with things that have happened obviously outside their control, but also with their control. It feels like we're getting it felt like we were getting some stability. This seems to confirm that we are getting a stability. The wording in the article talks about Adepticon being the first leg of Golden Demon 2024, which suggests that there will be at least one more, so hopefully a UK leg. There was this huge, I'm sorry, I hated it, the video that was on that article. I think very poorly thought out. It's this lack of, it feels like a lack of care, and we've mentioned it before, where they have a flagship competition showcasing the best painted versions of their miniatures around the world, and it feels like some people involved care massively about it, and other people involved do not treat it with the respect that it clearly deserves, and that must be very frustrating, it's just, you've got to say it right before we actually delve into the nitty gritty, because I think there is some good suggestions, but it just sticks a little bit. Maybe this is how gamers feel when they just get an army book punted out with a different front cover and nothing else. I don't know.
I feel like we've had conversations with a lot of fantastic people in the company that care a lot about Golden Demon, and people that work for Heavy Metal otherwhere in the company. And I don't know who's done it, but I personally feel, having spoken to them, that they didn't come up with this. I just can't see them doing that, because I know that they'll have the same opinion that vehicles should be separate, because they're the people judging it, and it feels like this has been decided by a marketing team and go, hey, well, let's just do games because that's what we're trying to sell. And I would bet that the ticket price goes up, because previously, if you go to Adepticon, you didn't pay. You had your Adepticon ticket and you got to enter Golden Demon. I'd put money on it that you charge.
Yeah, they're 100% going to have to charge. Well, they're going to charge for Adepticon. I can't see it not happening.
It's fine, isn't it? That's by the by.
If I'm being charged to enter, I want clearness, clarity.
It just feels like this hasn't been made by someone who's passionate about it. And I might be wrong. I'd love to know, but that's just what it feels like, because I'm sure they would have the same opinion about vehicle as us.
Could it be put something around like how long it takes them to judge? Because is it less categories now?
No more.
It's more.
It's 15 now instead of 11, correct? 15 instead of 11, is that right, Matt?
Get them spreadsheets out.
I think it was.
There can't be that then. Well, that destroys my theory straight away that they're doing it in an effort to try and make judging easier. If anything, they just made judging 10 times harder because, like we said, how do you judge a large thing against the vehicle?
The merging the merging of 40k vehicle and large. I'm guessing, as it seems kind of obvious, they've done it because they wanted to cut down on the amount of categories while including new categories.
So each major system gets 3. And then some boxed games get 1, some boxed games get none, and rolled into the overall setting.
So how do they work that out?
Epic scale is ostensibly 3 different box games, when actually it'll really just be 1 box game by this time next year, I suspect. But it's small scale. It's a category anyway. But then you hammer together Dar Armor and Duel. But can we touch on the fact that if the major game systems are getting 3 categories each, why is Horus Heresy, which I understand is Specialist Games Studio, but it has its own tab on the Games Workshop web store? It is the flagship game of the Specialist Games Studio. It's directly comparable to 40k in its units, characters or single miniatures, squads, vehicles. It's had its entire own Golden Demon, which I think was undoubtedly the most competitive and generally most heavily attended of the mini demons. And now it's getting 1 category.
We don't know.
That's okay, actually.
So because I think this is a one-word talking. Why do you feel it's okay? It only gets the one thing.
So for me, I think that I think it's cool. You could do a Heresy unit of Space Marines in the 40k squad category.
But can you?
Well, no, I'll say this is what I think it should be like.
Right,
I don't know if it is, but it would be good if it was like that. And then there was still a vehicle category, and you could enter your Heresy tanks in there. I think having a Horus Heresy single figure category would be nice because you're going to get people super passionate about Heresy. And you can just have the cool Primarch category, right? Demon Fulgrims all round. And that's cool. And 40k single figure is so competitive. There's absolutely space to have
so that's how you do it.
Heresy.
So you'd allow everything else from Heresy in the 40k equivalent.
Yeah, but you'd have your own thing.
But they'd have their own. I mean, what do you think about the idea of doing it where they don't have their own category, but you get, like Forge World used to do a best of show trophy. Yeah. And a lot of other painting competitions, right, have separate awards, don't they? Sort of individual sponsored awards. You could have something like that too, right?
I'd be happy with that.
I think
you could have a Horus Heresy best of show, because you could arguably put, like we said, you could put Horus Heresy. You could enter Horus Heresy in nearly every single one of the 40k events, even like the small epic scale you could do.
So I on the blog post I wrote the other day, I said like you could have each game system with its own best of show, but the only downside to that is it gets a bit confusing with how already confusing the award tree is, because finalist is below commended, and then the best of show would be below commended, or like it just gets very confusing.
I don't like the idea of that, and I think it was cool in the past, but now, like Henry said, Heresy is so big, it's got all this plastic things, and I think it deserves its own category, but not sacrificing the vehicle category. And I think in general, this is kind of what I was going to say at the end, but I think in general these additional categories are brilliant because, like I said at the start, it needs to be inviting for new competitors, and I think these extra categories, having sat and thought about it, are a good thing because it does allow more leeway and people to get, lowers the barriers slightly to Golden Demon. I think that's a good thing, but not sacrificing the dual diorama category and the vehicle 40k category. I think that's sad. It does lower the barriers 100%.
I see. I'm going to challenge you on that. I don't think it does, because if you now want to enter something that's Horus Heresy, if, for instance, the Horus Heresy is things like Primarchs, squads, vehicles, all that, or if you were like, okay, I fancy entering a vehicle, it's something I feel comfortable with, it's now a vehicle and large model. I think it pigeonholes it. It's okay. It's like, okay, if I'm a newbie, I've pretty much got 3 categories or 4 categories to pick from where I might do okay in it potentially, as opposed to just painting something that you love and enter it. Which we know that's the theory. That's what you should do anyway. You should just pick something that you love, paint to the best ability, and enter it. But I don't think it opens it up.
I'll counter that, because if you want to do AOS unit, there's 9 golden demons for it now. So there used to be 3 golden demons for AOS unit. Now there's 9. So it has to be easier. And if you look at the category list, the Age of Sigmar picture, the Warhammer Underworlds picture, and the Blood Bowl picture, that's first, second, and third of one category last time. The Age of Sigmar picture's the Trolls, the Underworlds picture was the Silver, and the Blood Bowl came bronze. So, now there's 9 demons.
Blood Bowl, I completely get having its own category. Again, I think it needed to be worded Blood Bowl team.
Yeah.
But it is not part. Blood Bowl is not part of the Age of Sigmar setting. Even traditionally, it was sort of old world adjacent anyway. It's sort of in its own little bubble, setting. So that being separate, I think makes total sense. But someone said in the chat, I think Albert and Fiona are talking about how, and kind of what you said, Andy, a lot of people chose to use the Underworld's warbands as their entries for AOS unit. And I think often that's because the sculpts are excellent or very characterful, but also there's generally fewer models, right? Than having to paint 5 or 10 or whatever of a unit. And I'm sad at that simply because unit's often been one of my favourite categories to look at, because especially the last few years where people have started, when they changed the rules slightly with the presentation on it, where they didn't have to be on gaming bases, so you could be a little bit more elaborate with how you presented them. It was something to really look forward to. Are we just going to end up with no entries in the Age of Sigmar unit category?
No, you will. But I think the Underworlds category is the worst new addition. And I think if you put Underworlds merging with AOS unit, it would be pretty damn good. And I think, just going back to Blood Bowl, I think Blood Bowl, you should do your team on plain grass bases, right? And you're at a slight disadvantage there, because if you do a Blood Bowl field base, it might not be as impressive as a very highly painted base that comes stock on an Underworlds model or a Necromunda base, because you just can't paint it as well. But so I think Blood Bowl team is a good category, because you want to do the basing in that way. And I've also seen little things like people that weren't interested in Golden Demon, they're like, oh, I do Blood Bowl and there's a category for that now, so actually I'll do the Golden Demon now, so that's positive. But Underworlds, it feels like the Underworld's warbands made the Age of Sigmar unit category fantastic, and it shouldn't be separated, in my opinion. No, especially since
they are
most
Age of Sigmar units.
Yeah.
And exactly what you're about to say then as well, mate. Like,
they're not in stock.
Many of them have been not just out of stock, but out of production for a long time.
And isn't it like on its last legs? We don't know when it's going to end. I thought this was supposed to be like the last season of it as well. Like, will they then take it off? Like, how can you have a category for something that you can't buy?
Yeah, but I suppose it's is it here for 1 year and gone? Because we're looking at this, and all the rumours are suggesting that we're going to be seeing Warhammer: The Old World being released over winter.
Like its own category.
So is that going to get added in? Is it going to be ignored like the piece of shit that it appears to be being treated like in all the articles anyway? Which I'm not happy about, obviously. It's what's going on. It all feels very disjointed, very ill thought out, and surprising given the people that we know have been involved recently within the company pushing to make Golden Demon the amazing thing it is.
I think that's part of the problem, is the people that know Golden Demon, want Golden Demon, aren't in these meetings where these decisions are being made.
That's what it feels like.
It does.
Yeah. It's interesting that we talk about box games and what things have got things. Like Kill Team doesn't have its own category, and Kill Team's the most popular box game.
That's what I was saying earlier. Like, if Underworlds get their own, why doesn't Warcry? It's both Age of Sigmar units. No, your Warcry goes in Age of Sigmar unit.
Yeah, kill team. And even like I know we said about vehicle, but like Necromunda, what's the parameters? In Necromunda, they have single figure models, they have vehicles, they have you can enter one of those great big conveyors from the ash wastes, and you could enter a single fig. How do you decide that?
So with that, do you think that is Necromunda a bit? Does it sit as a bit of an outlier in that sense? In that it does have a handful of things that aren't a gang, but the majority is a gang. I think you probably could judge one of the Iron Crawlers next to a Vansar gang or whatever like that. But I certainly don't think you can judge heresy things against each other. It's like just having one Warhammer 40,000 category.
I like the idea of Necromunda as a display of a gang on a base, right? Like the Blood Bowl teams. That's why I think those two categories are cool.
So you think it should be gang? You don't think it should be anything sort of Necromunda? Because you have got gang. Vehicles, you have got walkers, you have got special characters.
So you should be gang. They would if it was a vehicle, where would you put it into the Warhammer 40k large model and/or vehicle category?
Yeah, I guess so.
An out-painted Ambot, where would that go?
I think an Ambot should be like in a vehicle or something like that. But I think that the point in having a category is to show a different type of skill, or it's separate enough that it deserves it. And as a Necromunda single figure doesn't need its own category. But if you're doing a gang, a whole Necromunda gang, maybe you could do that on a display base, and it's you've got the Underhive, and it's brilliant, and it shows off a different skill to doing a 40k single figure, absolutely perfect. But like displaying a beautiful thing as a group, and that's how I feel about Blood Bowl too. Is like here's a Blood Bowl team, and it's coherent, and I do think those categories make more sense. Where there's Underworld's a couple models, I don't know, it just feels right to me personally. I'm trying to sort of be objective and justify it. And I do think you need some new additional categories that are, let's face it, going to be less competitive. And that will be Necromunda and Blood Bowl. But I think the biggest thing is sacrificing some very important classic categories. And I'd be all for any additional ones up to a point, even Underworlds, but not getting rid of Duel and Diorama. That's so sad that that's gone. I mean, that's the big worst one to discuss. You think that's the worst?
Yeah.
Because
I think
Duel is one of the most creative little categories, and it was growing so well year on year again. It did fade away for a little bit, but it really was coming back into its own. And now it's just merged with Diorama. And while I don't think that's necessarily bad for Duel, and I know you disagree with this, but I think it's devastating for Dioramas merging those two.
I thought about it some more, Matt, because my main entry will be Diorama. And my Diorama is large. And like what you pointed out to me, is that it's difficult. If someone can paint two miniatures absolutely perfectly, it's probably not got a shot, especially with not so much how they've been judging UK, but how they judge the US one. They've really gone for small miniatures and perfection, looking at the last two Slayer swords. So you're not really getting rewarded. So it's like I'm in the diorama category. I probably shouldn't do a diorama. I should do a Duel because it's more likely to do okay or whatever. So
it's going to really come down to what the guidelines are on it and how that judging is going to be sort of taken into account. Because if you have a massive, like if you take like Roman Lepat's Last Light diorama, it's huge, but like the individual models aren't of the quality of, not quality, but like they're not the same level of like in time invested in each model that a Duel can have. But the overall theme is what you're looking at. But
then you could argue that composition, and that's diorama or a Duel, and an incredible composition will outweigh two models pointing at each other and things like that. And so I think you can merge them actually, but not when you've got underworlds. Like, don't
No.
merge them to bring underworlds in. That sucks, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the whole point with it. Is the additional categories would be fine, but you've culled such classic categories.
I would agree with that. Like, I don't have a problem with there being new categories. I think there needs to be some really defined guidelines on what those category entries would look like and what you can and can't put in them. I don't have a problem with any of the new ones, but yeah, at sacrificing something as, you know, old school and prolific in games in Golden Demon as Diorama and Jordan, banging that together, and like large model or vehicle, even like the AOS large model or war machine is a similar sort of thing. You know, I think that's a real shame.
Yeah,
they've butchered those to bring that in.
I think the dual categories have been really good. You know, we got a Slayer sword from the dual category. Then we had the duel from America with Ben Comets and Steve Garcia. Some really good ones. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
two great duels.
Hagen Pixit's one from the one just gone. The knight fighting the dragon with the spear.
Yeah.
How would you do that against a huge diorama? You know, Chris's one's going to win every time, and it is as big as some dioramas and whatever. But they do feel like different categories. You know, one should be about fighting, and one you can just have people chilling out, right? And that's kind of what can be nice about dioramas. You could have just someone on their own. So yeah, I think, the vehicle and this I'm really, really sad about, and I just think they've got to bring them back.
They have to. I know it's probably not in the decision of. I hope it would be in the decision of the judges, but it's not going to be. And they would have at least some input be allowed, but it's just I want it to happen. I don't see it happening though. They've committed to it now, and GW don't like U-turns.
Do you think it's anything to do with the fact of the staff that they may have for GD at Adepticon? Do you think it's the fact that this year anyway, it was a very different team doing the judging out in America to what it was?
I can't see them being part of that choice. I don't know who's done this, but maybe it's, you know, we don't know. So we're only speculating on who decided it. It just feels like people who maybe don't. That sounds bad, but maybe they don't know the ins and outs of Golden Demon.
But this is what I'm saying. Do you think that decision's been made because GD is seen differently over for Adepticon? You know,
no, because I think it'd be UK team, right? And the UK team will have seen the UK demons.
So do you think it would be the same categories for both America and UK?
Well, maybe they're trying it.
Hopefully
maybe
not.
They are trying it.
I think they might change it. I genuinely think they might change it.
The thing that makes me think they might change it would be depending on the quantity of entries into some of these categories in America. Because while Adepticon is big and it's growing, like 2020 was good, 2023 was even bigger, I still think some of these categories are going to be pretty empty.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There were. That's kind of what I was trying to say. Is there's always some weaker categories, but you know the vehicles and stuff were okay, and now those categories are getting stronger, and the jewels and dioramas were good, and now they're getting really strong, and there isn't any need for more AOS units, and now you've got 9 awards essentially for an Age of Sigmar unit and stuff like that.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
so I think what's interesting is you all three of you have touched on it, and I've seen it around on comments on various groups and whatnot, that again there's no real dislike for there being new categories.
I think it's a good thing.
There's a little confusion around the Underworlds one, but all the other they seem sort of like people seem fairly open to it. We've had different categories over the years, ones that have stayed for a couple and then disappeared. Duel has been all over the shop, right? Like it's not always been there, right? And then you had that one. You had that one for a few years where everyone had to paint the same miniature. You know, there's been. I'm sure Matt knows better than the rest of us all the various categories there's been. But the thing that you've all mentioned, so I've seen mentioned elsewhere, is the dislike of the two glaring sacrifices that have been made, which is large model and vehicle and dual and diorama being smushed together. So I think it'd be very interesting to see the reaction. Part of me feels like if there's enough noise, a change will get made. The other half of me feels like, why do I bother getting excited just when I think they give a shit? It appears that they don't. So, it's tough.
Do you really think they'll change it if they face so much of a
I honestly, mate, I think it's all to do with whichever fucking team that they've thrown the dart in the dartboard with and decided is running it this time, right?
They won't change it. It will be the same for US as UK. They're committed to it now. They just won't.
But how are they committed? Well, opposed to Warhammer Community, they committed 4 years ago, Matt, to telling us we were getting all these incredible things for Warhammer: The Old World. And instead, they're basically telling me I can keep playing with my fucking 6th edition miniatures. But they committed to awful looking Space Wolf helmets from Forge World for Mark III, fucking manga bullshit wolf heads. And now they've done a U-turn and brought out a bunch of new Mark VI.
They won't commit to good ideas, but they'll commit to bad ones.
But to be fair, and another one when they released the Sons of Votan book. And the army list for the first time, and everyone went, "It's the most powerful army by a fucking country mile." So they just deleted it.
Yeah, I mean they've just changed fundamentally one of the rules for their main game system. So they're not averse to just going, "Oh fuck it."
I would say they're not adverse to it where there's a profit loss.
Right. And here we go. This is the crux of it, right?
Yeah.
It's just how important is it to them?
Minimal amount of money and funding and resources pushed into GT.
All right. What if you could change it? What would your categories be? What would you keep? What would you change?
Yeah, but
I
think we all agree.
I'd delete Warhammer Underworlds, and I'd have the new ones other than Warhammer Underworlds, and I would keep the original ones and have them back.
I think that's all they need to do. Get the old two back. Merge Underworlds into that, then there's actually only one more category than they've got here, 15 to 16, and then it's awesome. I think we said you could merge 40k large and AOS large if you needed to merge something, but just keep them separate too. Why not? I think I want to make Golden Demon. I talk to so many people about Golden Demon, and most people, or not most, lots of people are nervous and don't see the point. And that's sad. So I do want Golden Demon to be more accessible, but I don't want it to be easy. And I think having more categories helps make it a little bit easier. And you go for those categories. But yeah, we all agree. We've just lost some ones that we love so much.
But it's interesting you're talking about the easy categories, and I know easy is a very loaded word, I think, when we talk about this, but essentially categories
less competitive,
and less intimidating too, right? But for instance, there were targeted categories. There always has been. People target certain categories because they think it will be less competitive and they have a better chance of getting a demon. But it's been interesting to see, if you could call it the meta, I suppose, if you want, but it does evolve, but it also seems to kind of level out and self-police a bit. Because for a while, like Lord of the Rings was often seen as a softer category, right? And then you started getting some properly legit, and now I would say the miniatures that are winning, but then I suppose equally that doesn't necessarily have any effect on how competitive, because of course if there are 4 fantastic, all a category needs when there's gold, silver and bronze is for there to be 4 fantastic entries, and then actually the winners are always legitimate. We're not talking about it how, for instance, some of the mini demons where there literally were 4 entries in a category and 3 of those were walking away with a demon.
So that came from so I was going to talk about that, but I think that came from frequency of how many Golden Demon events there were, and I don't think we've got
stuff quickly.
Yeah, and I don't think we've got that problem anymore. It's annual, and I think US, UK, that's okay. So I think even with these categories like Blood Bowl and Necromunda, I don't think we'll ever have that situation where it's 3. We've had 3 entries, haven't we? Or was there 2 entries once in a category? Anyway. I don't think we'll ever go back to that. And I just think that, you know, if someone's like, "Oh, I'm so scared of doing Golden Demon, I've got no chance," it's like, well, do you like Blood Bowl or Necromunda? Oh, I love Blood Bowl. We'll go for that then. You know, it's going to be a nicer time than AOS single, but at the same time, if you want to do an AOS single, do that, but maybe do that and a Blood Bowl thing. You know, then it's nicer.
Albert in the chat is now saying that all the specialist games should just be one single specialist games category.
No, I thought that is I thought that as well, but it's about, you know, how can you compare a Blood Bowl team to Necromunda and stuff like that, and I just think that's sad. So, but yeah,
I think that's just it's an evolution, right? 10 years ago that was fine. Now, you know, these games have multiple plastic kits. They are a well-supported game. It is a bizarre studio within the company that works on them. But that's another conversation, really.
You do have to. Oh, sorry.
No, please go on, mate.
I was just saying, with that, like, you do have to, in some way, have like for like to be able to fairly compare things.
Yeah.
So merging all the specialist games into one, like, okay, you have a Adeptus Titanicus Knight and a Blood Bowl team.
But then they're merging Heresy into one. They're merging vehicles and monsters into one.
Yeah, I mean, all of this, like, it really comes down to what's in the bloody guidelines.
Yeah.
I think the important thing, if Kobe was speaking about it in the chat, I think the important thing to remember is, okay, there's changes and it might change your game. It shouldn't change your game plan. It just might change what you're entering. And which means that you'll still be entering the same thing, but just be a different category. I've spoken to people and they've actually said, "Oh, there's no point in entering now, so no, I'm not going to win."
Yeah.
Which is the absolute worst attitude to have.
But maybe not. Maybe it's not not going to win, but maybe it's not even got a shot, or maybe it's ruin the feeling. Now, I empathise with that, and I think you should paint what you want to paint. Like, I was going to do a diorama, I'm still going to do a diorama, but I think it's sad if it takes the edge off it. Right?
As nice as that advice is, and I agree with it completely,
yeah,
it's not the only way of doing it. We know people that are full-on self-confessed sharks. Like, they target categories. They don't give a fuck about what they're painting. They pick the categories. They want to win the demons. That to them is the hobby. That sort of ultra-competitive attitude. So
it's all in the stats.
So it's just, just paint what you like, but they don't care. They don't really like any of it. They just they're just trying to get the paint on there. So I'm not saying it's the wrong advice by any means, but I suspect those people it really could mess up.
It's going to be really disappointing for a lot of people if, say, you painted a unit, a heresy unit, and you wanted it to go into 40k unit, but because of now the rules, it has to go into the Horus Heresy thing, which isn't the category you wanted to go to. And depending on what the guidelines are, you're up against Primarchs. It's going to hurt a little bit. It's not great.
Yeah, they just need to sort that out, right? Like, what are these? Yeah, and I guess that we should probably come back to it when there is some clarification. But I'm assuming that Horus Heresy is a single figure, and I'm hoping if you can enter tanks and units, then I will be face palming, because that would be absolutely terrible.
I can see it happening.
Anything from the Horus Heresy, I reckon that's what it's going to be. That would be hilarious.
Yeah. Would you like a scenery category?
No.
It's open.
Why?
Because that's diorama, mate.
Or open,
yeah, open.
See, that's for what's that one where they bring their armies and they take pictures of them?
Armies on Parade.
Armies on Parade.
Should that be part of Golden Demon then?
No.
Why?
It used to be on the same day.
Too big.
It's too big. But then you had what was it, 2017 or 18? That giant bloody church thing, castle.
Yep.
I think I like the fact that for that you don't have to be present in the spot for it. If you can enter that from anywhere in the world, can't you? You just take a good photo and you can enter it there.
Now you have to go to a shop, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, you don't have to travel. Like, you don't have to fly from.
It's all local.
And enter it.
Yeah.
So you asked about what categories would we add. So we might as well try and end it being a bit more imaginative. And what categories would you like to see that aren't mentioned there?
Sculpt.
You'd like to see some
that'd be good.
Just a sculpt. sculpt.
Be
That's what
cool,
I
yeah.
like.
What are your guidelines on that, Rich?
It could be anything hand sculpt or 3D sculpt and printed, as long as it was
Has
done
to
by yourself.
be-
Or,
What
It has
percentage
to be official
sculpted?
GW green stuff from the shop.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
I would like that,
can I
and then-
use any bits, or or does it all have to be sculpted?
Yeah. No, it all has to be sculpted.
Or you could call it scratch build or conversion. That'd
Right.
be cool.
Yeah. I would love to see as well a category that I thought of the other day. I'd love to see collab. So like
Teams.
with GW, it's you have
Teams,
you sign to say that I put
Every
this
entry is a
together, I
collab,
painted
mate.
it. Yeah, but I would love to see it. Like how you get in Monty, where you'll have like a fantastic sculptor will create something, and a fantastic painter will add their bit to it. I would love to see.
Could you simply
Why?
change the rules for open to allow that?
Yeah,
I
potentially.
mean,
Why
they
you-
do, but so I dislike it because if you can't get the good people to do stuff for you, you're screwed. And you get people that are friends, and they'll just they'll screw you. So, for example,
We spoke about this, didn't we?
I tried to book
recently.
a sculptor, and he was like, "Nah, I'm not available, so I can't do it. So it's not competitive." And it's so
Also,
it's
I don't
it's just
think
not on really.
Primaris
GW would-
Lieutenant, someone's saying, big great category. Certainly,
Well, it used to
plenty
be
of
really
options.
I used to be the heavy metal. What was it? The heavy metal category where they chose a mini.
Right.
Primaris
So did
Lieutenant
you
one time.
did you like that category?
I liked it. I liked it was you got to compare something purely that's very
I
similar.
did actually, yeah.
Which
Yeah, I
one
did.
category was that?
It was about
It was-
3 or 4 years it ran for,
Heavy metal masterclass.
and it was just
So-
So they just picked a model you had to enter the same. I don't
Yeah.
remember that. When was that?
recently,
They did
like
it
just
fast,
before
yeah.
COVID. Yeah.
18 and
Yeah.
19. They did a farseer for the first one, and that was good. But the problem with it is a lot of people just had that model painted from years ago, and they just go, "Oh, I've done that, yeah," and they brought it,
yeah,
which
I
is
do it.
fine because they were really good, and that's okay. But then I think when they did the Iden S Deep Kim Tidecaster, it was brilliant. And
You know what they should
and-
do is do a model for it. So when you announce
Yeah.
it, you release the model. There you go. Like they're making a fuck ton.
That'd be so fun, wouldn't
People
it?
like, right.
That'd be so fun, yeah.
But then they'd have
You're
to
right.
commit to getting a schedule in and getting it built ahead of time.
Go on. I see we won't
know,
be too salty.
organisation.
on this. But like, I think it's. I think that because we do want it to feel fresh, and it does need evolution and all that. But I do wonder if you need some stability and
Oh, yeah,
some consistency
Stability?
before you start. Then
It
expanding.
it needs to evolve, but it can't be at the expense of
Yeah.
everything else. And I feel like that's where this has gone wrong. It like some evolutions of it's cool, but you've sacrificed core
Don't take
staples.
away, right?
Yeah.
Add to it. Don't take away. I think's the main thing.
That's always going to be a difficult challenge, though. Like changing something that's so prolific, historic, and has so many. We have such a buy-in for it. Changing it and pleasing people is always going to be a difficult task.
Yeah,
I think-
difficult but as Matt said, are the people making these decisions, because it doesn't appear like it, are the people making these decisions people that do consider it historic and important,
Potentially,
and
you don't know, do you? Yeah.
that it matters, or
I don't,
yeah,
I don't think there's wrong with any. I don't think any changes are wrong. It's just how you communicate those changes.
old hammer category. I'm glad someone said it in the chat. That would have been mine.
Square base is mandatory.
to add in. Like no, because I'd love to see some old like second ed 40k stuff as well. Like a nostalgia category. I'd be keen to see that. But yeah, I think we're in danger of just going around in circles really now,
Yep.
repeating ourselves. But to sum up, we would like more guidelines.
Yeah. Release the guidelines.
Release the guidelines.
Shouldn't-
And bring
Shouldn't
back
change-
vehicle.
And for goodness
Sure.
sake, like
Dual and diorama.
separate out vehicle and monster. If
But I
they're
think-
only going to give us one, what one are you having? Dual and diorama separated, or vehicle and large?
Vehicle.
Yeah.
Larger. I do think it's important to add though that even if always changes, it shouldn't change your thought process in painting something that you really like and entering it into whatever category?
I'm doing Necromunda, Blood Bowl, and Underworlds, mate. I've changed my entries. That's the three categories.
That's not
I'm
surprising.
going for.
That's not surprising.
I love
Scalper.
Blood Bowl.
Absolute scalper.
I really like Blood Bowl.
You talk about it all the time. It's a massively firm favourite of yours.
It's like football, which I love as well.
Yeah. All the sports. Go sports.
Sports
Yay,
ball.
sports.
Right. So let us know your thoughts as you have been in the comments. Like I say, we felt it would be remiss not to do a quick episode on this, given we talk about competitions quite often. But this is again coming from a place where all four of us just want Golden Demon to be successful. We want it to be a competition that we're proud to attend, that we look forward to entering every year, and so on and so forth. So, and we know a lot of people within the company of Games Workshop that also want that. So let's hope that they can get their voices heard.
Not going to stop anyone from entering, I don't think.
I think it's good. No, I don't think it'll change anything, mate. And unfortunately, that's probably, that will be a barrier to change. Unfortunately,
we're bought in, man.
All the boycotts, but doesn't mean we can't have a little bit of a chat about it, does it?
No.
So,
well, hopefully that the chat, spurs them to, slap themselves and correct themselves.
Please bring back vehicle.
Because
Hey,
I'm
Rich,
certain the
at
people
least
making
you
these
asked.
decisions are watching any shows to do with painting or Warhammer.
They really give a shit about our opinion.
Yeah, or
I mean, like,
English
they're just in
anyone,
the spreadsheets with the numbers going ching ching ching.
but we will see. Right, well, thanks very much, guys. If there's nothing else you want to add, I think we can wrap it up. Chat, you've been awesome, as ever. We'll be back with our next episode, probably next week. Might be the week after. We haven't decided yet. We'll be back on the usual format. So if you've got anything you want us to talk about or accounts that you'd like us to feature and stuff, always remember, get in touch. All the usual social media places, emails and all the rest of it. So thanks, chaps. Thanks, chat. We'll see you next time.